Hey y'all, welcome to Convos with Bree. That's BREE. Today is day 26 of the Visibility Challenge, and whew, today I'm doing something a little different. Today I want to kind of mash up some worlds that I have been bringing together and bringing to light. And one of my favorite ways to learn, to decompress, to get inspired, to all kinds of things is through television, through film, through books, through other people's worlds. And my whole life, I've kind of hid this away because so many people kind of made fun of me about it. And a lot of people felt the need to tell me that if you watch a lot of TV, you're stupid or you're lazy or you waste time or all of these different things. And I don't do TV or film the way that those people do. But I also would see them read books. Like, this is way back, okay? Like, when I was in school, we would do all these reading challenges for as long as I can remember. And when we had to read 2 books, I would read 100. And when we would be tested on the books, I could not wait. I had this one class where we would actually have to sit down with one of the teachers, and we would have to actually have a conversation about the book. And we both enjoyed it so much. Like, she told me at one point, Bree, you don't have to read any more books. Like, you passed this class within like 2 days. And I had read, I think it was like 150 books already at this point. And I think the goal was like 20 for the whole length of the class for the semester. And I loved it so much though, because when we would sit down and talk, she would kind of like look through her notes on what the book was about and then refresh her memory. But then she just wanted to know what I thought. And she told me that I always had a take on it that after all these years, she had never in her life even considered, never heard, nobody even kind of caught what they were talking about. And I loved it because I could see so clearly so much human emotion, so much of all sides of things. I knew so quickly that multiple things could be true. And I saw in everything that truth was not what people paired it with. Truth was different than what anybody else seemed to say about it. To me, truth was one of the most complex areas of anything because so many things could be true. And when I was a kid, and again, if you have read my second book, Young Writer's Day, Fragile Minds and the Adults That Mold Them, you know a fraction of what I was going through as a kid. And that fraction was not small. Um, the fact that that is something that I felt safe enough to write about because of everything else that was going on in my life and everything that didn't feel safe to talk about when I was writing that book. If you read it, that nothing, even the lesser of the hard things that I was going through were really, really catastrophic. And they were detrimental to my way of thinking and my development and my foundation and everything that would roll out in life for me. I learned real life wasn't safe, that people were not safe, that people lied, and that they could distort the truth to use it to their advantage. And when I was a kid, I really fell in love with music, with TV, with books, with movies, with all of it. And I talked a little bit about this before, but when I saw E.T. for the first time, I was absolutely destroyed. I was only like 4 or 5, and my mom literally was like, I could not console you. There was nothing that I could say because that movie brought to light a truth within me that I knew I would struggle with for an extremely long time. And that was a desire to be somewhere while wanting to be somewhere else as well. I didn't know that it also tied into a lot with grief. I talked about losing my grandma to cancer when I was very young. And I felt like I blinked and she was gone, and my entire world was rocked. It would never be the same without her there. And it changed my distortion of safety and of fairness and all of these things. And I knew when I saw ET, like I wanted to be where she was, but I wanted to be where my family was. And I would continue to find things in life that would make me feel this absolute pulled apart divide that just felt absolutely impossible to manage. And it terrified me because I knew that no matter what I did in my life, I would never want to be one place less, and I could never be everywhere all at once. And when things started getting really hard in school, I didn't want to be there anymore. A lot of the kids were becoming really mean. They were so mean to each other, and I hated seeing them destroy each other. I hated seeing them set each other up to fail. I hated the way that they talked poorly about each other and then pretended to be kind to their face. I hated everything about it. And then to see the teachers participating and understanding that adults were just as bad, if not worse. Like this was never going to get better. So I started faking being sick a lot. And it wasn't really fake because I really did feel sick. But I only felt sick until I didn't have to go to school. And then the minute I didn't have to go to school, all the pressure, all the negative vibes just dissipated, and everyone went to work, and my brother went to school, and it was just me and the dogs. And I felt so peaceful. And I would turn up the music and play all my favorite songs on repeat. And I would jump off the furniture and roller skate in the house and play my games. And it was the best day ever when everyone would just leave me alone and I had the whole house to do what I wanted. And one of my favorite things to do was pop in my VHS tape that I had made. And listen, back then you had to like work for this, okay? I worked hard for this. If you know, you know. But I recorded every single Michael Jackson music video that was out. And I recorded his movie Moonwalker. And I would stay home and I would watch Moonwalker, and then I would put on the VHS of all of his music videos, and I would dance and I would sing. And the thing is, it wasn't just the music for me. From the time he was like little and seeing him become this person, I felt really kindred, really connected with him. Like he understood what I understood about the world. And I saw in him an adult that never really grew up. And I knew that that would be me. And I knew that this lifelong misunderstanding of him as a whole was something that I would also always know. And it made me feel sad for us, but also so grateful to see somebody who was leaning into his weirdness so loudly and proudly and creating such unique and incredible, just everything. Everything he did, it was just perfect because it was just him. And then the media started to destroy him, and I I couldn't handle it. I couldn't watch it. I kept him. I felt like I took a snow globe, my Michael Jackson snow globe, and I kept all my favorite memories of him in there. And I let him die years before he died in my mind, because when I saw him, he was no longer the same person that I had resonated with. He was no longer who I recognized, because he didn't recognize himself. And I could feel his struggle, and I empathized, I sympathized, but I also knew I couldn't know. I didn't know this man personally. I didn't know him now. And I wasn't going to have the opportunity to know him. And I felt like this about multiple big names, where, like, Chris Farley, oh man, I resonated so hard with Chris Farley. I will never forget when I found out he died. We were actually on a family road trip, and my mom was reading the paper and said it out loud. And I was like, I need it. I need to read that. I need to read it. And I'm reading about him dying, and I was just devastated, because I knew that wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. So I couldn't argue with it. But I always felt their sadness. I could always feel all the multiple layers. They weren't just a famous person to me. If anything, I felt more sad that the world could not separate the creative from the human. They could not allow them freedom to be themselves without destroying the creative side. It was it honestly, it made me scared to start this journey. Everything that I've seen and everything that I resonated with growing up, and I didn't know, if I'm really honest, how much of myself I wanted to share with the world, because I saw how the world could be so fast to make assumptions, and they could be so quick to flip flop back and forth with how they felt about you. And instead of asking the right questions, or instead of saying, huh, I don't know what this person does in their human form, but I know that I enjoy the creative side, they blurred it all into one. And one thing could not be without the other. And it was so small minded to me. It was so, honestly, it was so small minded that it made me think, how could the world ever truly understand what I'm trying to say? Because everyone just attacks. And I'm going to talk about The Verdict on Netflix, because that even left me a little speechless. And I had to process through all 3 episodes what I have known my entire life, and what I have seen and what I have felt personally. And the thing is that there's almost always, I have yet to find a story where there was absolutely no truth from one side. And both sides typically have truth that is woven in the whole existence of the story. And could some of these things be true? Yes. But could they be lies? Yes. I do agree with the verdict because I still had so many questions, and it was so complicated, and there's things that they left out. That there's pieces of that didn't make the documentary. Every time I watch a documentary, I try to get multiple sides of every documentary because, oh, the the Laci Peterson one is perfect. People still want to fight me in the streets sometimes when I talk about this, but I don't necessarily agree that Scott should be sitting in jail because I have seen so many different documentaries, and I was obsessed with Nancy Grace when I was growing up. So I watched all of these. I found out about a murder case when I was around 5 years old. My grandma had been talking about it in front of me. And then she compared this little girl, Anna Marie, to me. My middle name is also Marie. And my first name that I go by, Bree, is 4 letters. And she was telling me all these coincidences about us and how we were about the same age. And just, I don't know why my grandma, when I was this young, said anything. And my mom is over there, bless her, just trying to get her to stop talking about it. But when my grandma was going, she would say whatever she wanted to say, um, which was good and bad in a sense. But she, I remember feeling that day like she wasn't telling me this to scare me. She was telling me this because she recognized something about me specifically that could make me vulnerable to these same types of situations. And I felt like she was telling me to always trust my gut when it came to people, especially men. And I I kept tabs on this case to the best of my ability, and I ended up doing some research to kind of see how the family was doing because I think about them all the time. They've been such a huge part of my life, and I've had so many moments where I feel like Anna Marie saved my life. Without knowing that, without that story, I could have had the same fate, but I didn't because I was aware and I was not afraid to say what I needed to say. And it saved me and friends of mine from some really scary situations growing up. And I think that everything lands how it's supposed to, and it teaches us things if we're willing to be open to what it could possibly be teaching us. And I got a lot of learning, a lot of being able to understand what humans are saying between the lines before I had to take it into reality because I did watch and study characters. I did pay very much attention to body language and I had hearing loss. And back then, I did not have any resources. I had no hearing aids. I had no tools that were helping my brain be able to pick up on what was being said better. Captioning was a joke back then. If it even had captioning, it did not work. The words were wrong, but for the most part, there wasn't even captioning. And so a lot of times I was simply trying my best to pay attention to what they were saying, but what was important to me was the body language. And I started to understand that my hearing loss wasn't just hurting me, while it was hurting me in a lot of areas of life and making me less and less normal as the years went on, I became a master of being able to compartmentalize and to study and to be able to bank things away and test them to say, oh, I think this is going to happen with this person in real life. I think this person actually feels this way about this other person in real life. Am I right? And to this day, I have yet to be wrong. Watching the verdict messed me up a little bit because I have such a love for Michael Jackson and I have such a love for all the heartbreaking things that he went through. But nobody is perfect and everybody has things. And I don't really feel that he ever grew up. And to me, I've always thought that to him, hanging out with 12-year-old boys was like feeling like one of the gang, like he was 12. And some of the things they talked about, well, if there were two 12-year-olds in a room together and they were showing each other magazines or whatever, that's I don't know any kids that didn't do that kind of stuff when we were kids, because you also have to think of the time frame. And even now though, like you hear about that all the time where these freaking kids, man, oh, thank God I didn't have to deal with this, but my son took it very seriously and he did not ever, like, he's just different. He's different and he's so much like me in so many ways when it comes to his just good. He's just good at his core. And but a lot of these kids, they take videos of girls and they show it around to all their friends. Like it was just a very normal thing to do. So when I'm watching this and I'm like, oh, some of these things could have truth. But then all of these other things come in that are like, well, all of that could be true. And after watching it, I don't feel like I know anything different. I don't feel like I really learned anything other than money makes people insane. And I already knew that too. And you really can't trust anything. So I really don't know. And you don't walk away from a court case thinking, I really don't know, and feel that somebody should be locked up for the rest of their life. Granted, it didn't matter because he was not alive long after that, and the rest of his life was not anything to be idolized or to celebrate. It was sad and it was tough, and if that was part of him paying for something that happened, he definitely paid for it. If it was something greater than that, we'll never know. And then there's all these theories that he was saving kids from Epstein and all of this. And we don't know, because if 3 years ago we would have been talking about rich, famous people and people in the government eating babies or doing all of these heinous things, we would have been a little more skeptical. And now we're to the point where we're so distrusting in everything that we believe anything. We believe the greatest conspiracy theories out there because we wouldn't put it past any of these people anymore. They're killing us with our food. They are, cutting us off from resources. They lie to us about literally everything. Our entire structure of growing up was a lie and just meant to keep us working and small. And now it's like we're all starting to unravel this, and it feels so hopeless. And so many times, because I do love documentaries, I love them. There's so much corruption that you truly can't believe anything. There's so much sway by the media with money for political reasons, things that happen behind closed doors that we would never, ever know. And I think that people used to like to say that TV shows and movies were just exaggerated. But what are they exaggerating off of? I always remember thinking if somebody came up with this, there's some truth to it. Even if they don't understand the truth that they're putting out there, something is flowing through them to portray this truth. And it's always just made me think so much deeper. And that is why I really have a problem with our judicial system and the prison system, and why I tried so hard to be a forensic psychologist for so long, because I really wanted to change that system. And everybody used to say to me, "Oh, well, Bree, you're going to go in there and talk to like serial killers and stuff, and all they're going to do is lie to you." But I know that. I know they lie, but I also know there's truth. And I think that everyone else gets so hung up on the lie that they miss the little slivers of truth. And I've always been different with that. I Detecting the lies is so easy for me that people don't even know when I'm doing it. A lot of times I would just do this thing where I'd bank it and I was like, "Oh, they're lying to me about this for some reason and I'm unsure why." And I don't seek the truth to like bust them or to be like, "Ha, I knew you were a liar." I don't use it against them. That's not what I'm trying to do. I've never really cared about the lie. I care about the why people feel they have to lie. And it's almost always for self-preservation. Sometimes sometimes there's other reasons, but for the majority that's what it boiled down to, was they didn't feel safe to tell the truth for whatever reason. And most of that comes from something that is so much bigger than this moment, so much bigger than just me. It's not me that they don't trust, it's a whole. It's something that they have been dealing with a lot of times for their whole life, or just from very prominent experiences that is what they're designing their experience from. So it's not just me. They're doing this all over in all these different areas of their life. That's why I'm so good at what I do, because I now when I have these convos, when somebody books a convo with me and we sit down and talk about it, I'm not trying to make you tell me things. I'm not even trying to get you to tell me the whole story. I don't really need that. I just need the core. And I just know the questions to get into the core, to make the connection internally for you. And some people share that with me and some people don't. Sometimes after we have a convo, I will reach out if I have a feeling, and I can feel when they're going through something that they were previously struggling with, but it feels like they're handling it differently because of something we discussed. And I reach out because I want to know if that feeling is accurate for myself. And I want to know if they really got something out of that convo that helps to grow them in the direction that they were looking to grow. And sometimes they're just so back in their head, they're just really struggling to see it, but they're feeling it. But most of the time, they know right away, yes, I am doing something that, I kind of feel like I slid back, but I also am recognizing how it's different. It feels different. I can't see it the same. I can't do the same things that I was doing. And then we either book another convo because they want to figure out how to jump even quicker, or they want to know what to do with this new awareness, or they are just taking in the moment. They're processing, they're soaking it all in. And internally, it's changing, and they don't need me in that moment, which is beautiful. That's my favorite thing about this, is that nobody becomes dependent on me. And that was one thing when I was trying to set up a coaching format that I was so terrified of, because trying to think of all the people that really need to have a conversation with me and that have needed to have these conversations with me, if I was trying to do this every single week, I would have to deny conversations. I would have to completely take all of my energy to do this. This is all I would be able to do. And that didn't feel right either. And I knew I needed to find broader ways that weren't this standard practice as a way to do it. And I don't want anyone to be dependent on anything. I want them to be able to go within and see their own power, see their own ability to change this, and not only just for them, but to see how they can influence others as well. Because if I can help you see something that sparks this new way of thinking within, and then you can recognize in others where they need you. They need you to do that same thing, not to make them dependent on you, but to be able to have this conversation with them that sparks their light. Well, then they recognize it on other people. I would never be able to reach all of these people. But with like the domino effect, with impacting someone who impacts someone who impacts someone, that is how we can do this. That is how we can help the most amount of people. But so many people get stuck on greed, and they get stuck on what one person has versus what they don't have versus what they need. And they're stuck in lack, and they're stuck in, well, I should have this, not you. And that's not it at all. And that's what complicates things like Michael Jackson so much. That man had too much money. He had too much money where other people had none. And here he is trying so hard to help anywhere he can. And it's still not enough. And now we're left with, was this just greed? Because the witnesses that were victims have a different story. And then you see a family who is not great on paper and who have done things like this before. And you see this new line of thinking, and it's like, oh crap, is this just greed? And then you see everything that happened with Epstein and all of this, and nobody really getting in trouble for anything. But yet, if you speed or you have weed in your car in Iowa, you might be going to jail. Like, it's just crazy. You have tickets you can't afford. It's just so out of balance. Everything is so out of whack right now, y'all, and it has been for so long. And we could argue that it's never really been not out of whack. We didn't know. And it can be really disheartening right now. It can feel so heavy. I mean, even for me, I just have days where I just want to scream. And for any of you that remember when I was going through during COVID, when the mask mandate came out, I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't read lips. Body language even is taken away because you don't have the expressions through the facial expressions. And every job that I have ever worked, I've been working 3 jobs since I was legally able to work. And before that, At 14, I was volunteering just so that I could guarantee that I could get a job when I was 15 or 16, making actual money. I was teaching grown men how to roller skate, and I was I was just doing anything I could from the minute I could work. I was literally opening one restaurant, working breakfast, going to school, leaving school and going to the other restaurant and working. When on days I didn't have cheerleading or softball, I would work. I would babysit on the side. I did anything I could. I have been hustling my whole entire life. And I could never get ahead. It was like no matter what I did, it was never enough. And it exhausted me and it burnt out my body. It burnt out my brain, my motivation. And now to hear about all of these people who have so much money when I'm not even sure if I'm going to have enough money to survive off the month. And I see them abusing their power and getting away with literal murder and anything else. How can that feel good? But I went at the advice of my audiologist. I went and I filled out a form for disability, and that was not easy for me, y'all. I felt like I was cheating, like I was taking an easy way out, like like everybody would think that I was such a piece of shit for doing that. So I kept it really quiet. And then I started going through the process. And the process was the most disheartening process I've ever been through. And it got to the point where I couldn't afford my house payment. I couldn't afford to eat. I couldn't afford anything, my basic bills. I couldn't afford to live. And I kept trying to work and I kept trying to find my way. And I would come home and my mental health was so tanked. I was crying. I was depressed. I felt like I was never, ever going to be okay again. And the debt was just mounting. And I was like, there's absolutely nothing that I will ever be able to do to get back out of this debt because I can't even make it when I'm working 3 jobs. I'm still living paycheck to paycheck because every time I would start to get ahead, something would go wrong. The washer breaks, car insurance goes up, like just one thing after the next. My son needed something for school. It was just one thing after the next. And I would think about getting older and doing this until I was 80. And death sounded sweet, y'all. Death sounded like the dream. I was like, during storms, I was literally like, let's do it. Take me out. Please don't make me suffer. Just like take me out instantly. I'm ready. And I've had a lot of moments in my life like that where death was actually like the kindest thing that could happen. And I've never feared my own death. I have feared the death of others because it felt like, how could I be stuck here without these gems? The only pieces of my life that felt like magic. It just felt like losing the people that made life actually worth living. Felt like hell on earth just got stronger and stronger and stronger. And so many of us are going through this right now. And the world is so out of balance and it is so unfair. And we just can't know all of these things. But there's such an easy way to balance these scales. These programs that are put in place for us, like disability, They're put in place for exactly what I was going through during COVID. And yet I went through 5 years in a court case where the judge actually told me, we cannot find a single job that you can do with your level of hearing loss, and then denied me. And when I went into the disability office in Davenport, Iowa, completely overcome with grief because they sent me another appeal form and none of the links worked. They all went to pages that were not found. I could not get a hold of anyone on the phone. They could not get me in before the appeal date. They just barricade after barricade, hurdle after hurdle. And no matter how high I jumped, no matter how hard I worked to get around them, they just found a new one to put in place. And it got so bad, and my mental health was so low that I couldn't play anymore. I couldn't. I couldn't show up. I couldn't fight this fight. I knew if I kept going, because I would have to restart from the beginning all over again. And I knew if I had to do that, I wouldn't make it. So I had to change my way of thinking. I had to go outside the box. I had to understand the truth. And that was that the government did not care about me. And when I started talking about it online, for the first time in my life, I started getting shadow banned on everything. I saw a post the other day from a couple years ago where I would write on somebody's wall, "Thank you so much for posting this. You are such an inspiration." And I would get a notification from Instagram saying, "You are banned for the rest of the day from commenting for your hate speech." And that happened every single day, no matter what I did. They wouldn't let me monetize for, I think it was almost would have been about 6 years of trying to do this. They would find every reason to not allow me to monetize. And it wasn't until I stopped sharing my experience about the government and how horribly they had treated me, about how the Virginia office, which is the top of the line federal disability office, I called them every single day, and they told me that hearing loss and being deaf doesn't have any impact on your life. So it's not considered a disability. That was straight from their mouth. And I just realized that I was fighting a system that was designed for me to lose. And then the craziest thing started happening was I realized there was nobody up here. I always thought that there was somebody up at the top that could truly make a difference. But then I was tested and shown over and over and over and over again that all it is people just like me, just normal ass humans answering the phones, repeating their scripts, and they have nobody that can do anything. And this just gets more and more true every day. The people that could make the change aren't there. They don't care. They're off with all their money, doing whatever they want and all their power. And I could have let that break me. I could have let that just take me out. I could have just become an angry, resentful person who felt like all I could do for the rest of my life was shout in anger and try to destroy these people. But I realized that that wasn't going to do anything either. If anything, that was just going to get me taken out and nobody would know what really happened. I would just be one more of those people, because that we're seeing too is extremely real. But then I decided I could do something more powerful. And that was I could just keep going. I could stay in love, stay in kindness, and I could see that the majority of the world is still just me. And maybe if I record every day, and maybe if I have these convos, and maybe if I get more people who can start breaking free and being the domino that knocks love and kindness all throughout their lives, maybe that will change something. Maybe that is where our power is instead of fighting each other and trying to be divided and trying to say, he for sure did it, he for sure didn't do it. We say, yeah, there's a lot of sides to this and we really can't know. But we can understand it more deeply and we can empathize and we can look at it differently. It doesn't have to be black or white. It can be all these colors in between, and multiple things can be true. And maybe we stop fighting each other so hard and hating everything so deeply and internalizing all of this pain. Maybe that's how we get those people out of there. Maybe that's how the government changes and it fills with people like us. Maybe it's just in something that feels so small right now is what's actually huge. I've always said that the little things are actually the big things. And all I can do is try. And all I can do is hope. And all I can do is keep being more myself and keep trying to see more than just black and white. Mm. Hmm. I didn't think that I would survive. And yet I have. Over and over and over and over again. And I don't just survive, I find my way to thrive. Because nothing that is meant for me will miss me. And I'm just going to keep trusting and believing. And no matter what happens, I'm going to find the love. I'm going to find the deeper picture. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. Let me know what this opens up for you. Let me know where this takes you. And if you've watched any of the documentaries or any of the things that I've talked about, let me know. I love that too. All right, y'all. Let's have a beautiful day and let's make the best of it.